I didn't have renal cell carcinoma, that there was an indication that I had something much more serious. It was the day that the doctor told me that I had this problem that I went home to see my son and tell him.
So at what point do you make the statement, prophetic, I'm going to be better by our anniversary?
Oh, yeah.
Ruslan.
Somewhere around this time, I remember hearing about both of you guys having health issues.
Oh, we did, yeah.
Very, very different though, right? Yours were physical,
and
his were connected to some sleep issues and
depression too, because
depression.
he was on antidepressants.
Uh-huh.
He was on antidepressants, and he changed his diet. It was also the diet was part of what his problem was, because he went off his antidepressants because he didn't need them once he was on a carnivore diet.
Mm-hmm.
But he's quite a sensitive person, and he ate something. We're starting to realize that he has a anaphylactic response to some foods. To peppermint is one, and sulfites, so preservatives. And so I had made a chicken stew for my sister's birthday, and I asked Michaela to go get some apple cider, and we always bought it with no preservatives in it, but she made a mistake and brought some with preservatives in it, and she and her father ate it, and the next day woke up not feeling well, and then he didn't sleep for practically a month.
Oh my gosh.
And then he was trying to go back to teach after Christmas, and he was too anxious, so he went to the doctor and got some benzodiazepines and some sleeping pills.
Was this around the same time that everything's exploding, and that's why the pressure is creating the anxiety as well?
I think so too. Yeah. It definitely was, and in fact, I'm not sure, but that might have been his last semester of teaching. Right. So
it's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was. And Jordan, he was someone who was going to teach until he was a very, very old man. He was going to be in the university. That was where he belonged. That was where he wanted to be. He had no desire to leave the university, and no indication that that was going to be a necessity either. So it really blindsided him, what happened here. But he's a very knowledgeable about these things, and so he didn't back down. He knew he couldn't back down. He was telling the truth. So that was that. And as it turned out, we've survived. And now we're doing what we can to help other people to deal with all of this. So I guess it had to happen that way. Now my problems were, well, I didn't see them coming either. We were on tour, the first tour in 2018. And I had gone to Croatia with my sister in May. After the first year of touring. And on the way back, I must have caught something on the airplane. And about 3 weeks later, I had a fever, and my digestion was really upset. And then my fever got better, but my digestion didn't get better. And so I thought eventually, it was probably a month later, I better go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and he said, you probably have a parasite. And I thought, oh yeah, maybe that's what I have, is a parasite. That could be. Never thought of that. So they tested me for parasites, no parasites. Well, that's North American testing. It's not very good. I mean, if you go to Africa, they'll find parasites because they know how to look for them. So there I was. He gave me an ultrasound, and they found a shadow on my kidney. So that was, found out I had a bacterial infestation is why I was sick, but they found a shadow on my kidney accidentally because I had no symptoms. And so that was kind of interesting. We went back on tour. I think I just came home from Ireland to have a biopsy, and they found I had cancer. But they told me I had renal cell carcinoma in my kidney and that it grows 1 millimeter a year and it doesn't kill anybody. So I didn't have to rush to have surgery. So we finished our tour that year. And in March, beginning of March, I came home to have surgery in Toronto. And I did. They took out half my kidney. And I felt like I had done what I was supposed to do medically. And so I worked on getting better.
Was it a pretty hard surgery and hard recovery?
Well, you know, I probably was, but I've been through other things in my life. So I was just willing to do this. And I knew I could do it. I'm not very squeamish. So I was walking long distance. I was getting better. But then I got a pain in my side, which was strange because I don't get pains in my side. And I contacted the surgeon. He had been contacting me, I think, because they do that. They stick with you for a while afterwards to see how you're doing. And I guess that was a red flag for him. So he looked back at the biopsy and he found that I didn't have renal cell carcinoma, that there was an indication that I had something much more serious called a Bellini tumor. And a Bellini tumor kills most people, so there's no treatment for that because people die so quickly that there's never been a treatment that people have put into practice to see if it works. So I went to San Francisco University Hospital. They had no treatment. I went to Houston to the MD Anderson. They had no treatments. So they said, you might as well just go home. You can take your choice. You can have chemo, radiation, you can have surgery. We don't know what'll help you.
So when you say go home, are you talking
Toronto.
about sending you like home on hospice? Is that what they're kind of alluding
home
to?
to Toronto to have
home to
whatever
Toronto. Okay.
treatment is
available.
Yeah. They said they'll be able to treat you as well as us because we don't know what to do about this problem.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was the day that the doctor told me that I had this problem that I went home to see my son and tell him that I didn't go for a checkup. I went for a checkup and I came home with a diagnosis. So I had to tell my son that I had a diagnosis. And so I did. I told him that the doctor told me I was going to die in 10 months. That's a pretty hard thing to tell your son.
How old is your son at the time?
My son, let's see, he was probably, that was 2019. He was 26. He didn't have any kids yet. He was married. He lived at the end of our street. And so I told him I was going to die. You know, when I was in the doctor's office, I thought, he gave me this prognosis. You're going to die in 10 months. I thought, oh, well, my mom died at 70. Her sister died at 65. Her brother died at 60. Her dad died at 56. Maybe I have the same genetics as that family. And so maybe that's what's going on. So I could kind of make sense of it, right? And Jordan was with me, but we were in such shock. I can't even remember what his response was. I can't even remember. We were too much in shock. And I went home to tell my son, and I told him. And then I got a reflection of what I had said because I could see the grief in his eyes that this boy was losing his mother. And the meaning the deep meaning that had for him. And it was, I had stayed home with my kids. I loved my kids. I love my kids. And Julian and I, we have a relationship that just has no trouble. And he had always been, when Michaela was sick, Julian was always the one who was there. And he was there. And when she was a teenager and she lost her hip and her ankle, he was a teenager too. And he came home after school every day. He didn't go out with his friends. He was a steadfast support at home. And he knew that was necessary and he did it. And so we've always thought a lot of him. And so to see him so hurt was hard on me. It was hard. And it was deeply revealing to me that he loved me and that all the love that I had had for him was reflected back to me. And that's, when you have little kids, the love that you pour on those little kids, can you imagine all that being reflected back on you? Like that's really something. Like that just, well, I'd never had that happen. Not like that. And it was such a eye-opening experience. First of all, it wasn't my decision. It wasn't my decision to say, okay, I guess I'm going to die. That wasn't the decision. I wasn't thinking of my husband who was sitting beside me or my son at home. I wasn't thinking of their experiences and how interconnected we are. We're so interconnected. We are not, we talk about what is a woman? Like, are you kidding me? A woman is a girl with children and usually a husband as well. That's a woman. Like, that's what a woman is. And so when I went home to see my son, I was his mother. I wasn't Tammy Peterson. I was my son's mother. And I was going to die and I was going to leave him. And I think that was a radically different point of view than I had ever had. And I felt all my doubt and cynicism leave my shoulder. I really felt lighter all of a sudden. I felt like my shoulders had been tied down somehow. Like I had been, I guess I'd been forcing myself into a point of view that was not adequate.
So you were at peace with, hey, doctors say in 10 months I'm going to die.
Yeah.
My family is all died early. And I guess this is just my hand in life. This is my lot. And then seeing the grief in your son's eye almost sounds like it gave you both a fire and a renewed hope.
And a broader outlet too, right? Much more fulfilling life story than I was giving myself. Because I was Tammy, this girl who grew up, got married, had kids, like all from my point of view. But that's the wrong point of view. That's the wrong point of view. So I felt this weight lift off me, and then I felt this great peace fill my body. And then I knew. I said, Julian, only God knows when I'm going to die. The doctor doesn't know that. The doctor, he has an opinion, and it's a medical opinion, and it's his job to tell me that, but it's not. He doesn't sentence me. No one can sentence you. Only God knows when you're going to die. And so what we're going to do now is take each day with gratitude. We're going to take whatever help comes our way and see where it takes us. And I realized then that everything was out of my hands. Everything. Anything that I had been holding on to, and I'm sure I'd been holding on to material things, all of a sudden they were meaningless. And so then I let them go. I felt freedom. I felt true freedom. I wasn't holding on to anything anymore.
All in that moment.
All in that moment.
With your son.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Wow, what a gift, huh?
Yeah.
What a gift.
So at what point do you make the statement, I would say even prophetic, I'm going to be better by our anniversary?
Oh, yeah.
Because that
I know,
is,
Jordan's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Jordan was not feeling well. When I started praying the rosary with this lady named Queenie who brought me a rosary, turned out my grandmother was Catholic. Turned out my grandmother baptized us, not my mom and dad.
Interesting.
I think she felt guilty for changing our religion from Catholic to Protestant. And she came to my mom's house and none of us were baptized and she took us all to church and baptized us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned that after I was sick. But now I forgot your question.
Yeah, I said when did you have that moment of I'm going to be better by our anniversary?
Yeah, so it was June. Sometime in June,
And this was quite a while after.
I was back in the hospital by then because then I had complications. Yeah, and I would go down in the hospital to pray, and when I came up, he was sleeping in my bed because he needed to be in the hospital, but he wasn't in the hospital because I was in the hospital. So he was biding his time to see what happened to me before he was going to take care of himself. Really,
he was contemplating.
Oh, he was not in good shape.
But to the point of taking his own life?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he was not in good shape at all.
Wow.
But he was constantly there with me. Yeah, that was a rough time. It's a still, how long? So that's 2019 and this is 2024. It's 5 years ago. But man, it was extreme. That was extreme. So I felt really sorry for him. And so I was just kind of, thinking, what can I say that would take away some of the burden that he's feeling? If I can, if there's something I can say. And I thought, I don't even know where this thought came. I said, George, I think probably by August, because that's when our anniversary was, I'll be okay by then. Like the cancer was gone as far as I knew. I just had this terrible complication. And I thought, doctors will figure this out surely by our anniversary. So I told him that.
Anniversary is in August. You say this in June to him. When did you have that initial conversation with your son? How early in a timeline was that?
Oh, that was in in April.
Okay, you guys just had a brutal 2019 then.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
gosh. So you say it almost just casually, even though they said, "Hey, no one survives this. 10 months to live," and in June, and then what happens next?
And then I'm in the hospital all summer. I weigh 80 pounds.
Oof.
So I've lost 40 pounds because it was a lymph problem that I had a lymph node that they'd taken all the lymph out and the rest of the kidney in this radical surgery I had after the initial surgery. And there was one place, I guess, that there was a leak, which they couldn't find. Didn't matter what they did. They scanned me in every possible way with dye and all of this stuff. They couldn't find the leak. And so I just was wasting away in the hospital. You don't want a private room in the hospital. That means they're giving you what they can. They don't know what to do with you. Just put you in a private room. I had lots of care. I mean, I had my mother-in-law came, my sister came, my sister-in-law came, my husband was there, my son was there, his wife was there. There were always people there. We played cards, and I prayed. I played cards and prayed. And my sister-in-law, the people from the tour sent me prayers, and she painted them in different colors and put them on my wall. So when I woke up, I could see the love that was out there. And I prayed. I just prayed all the time. But I was freezing. I can't... I really, like you said, do you want it cold in here or do you want it hot in here? I like when it's air conditioned because I do get hot, but I'm not very patient now to be cold. I was cold for months and a relentless cold, in July and August, I was wearing a wool hat and wool pants, like cashmere wool and a wool shawl, sleeping with a hot water bottle, and I would still be cold. Yeah, so it was kind of, what did they say about soldiers if they have wet feet? That was the thing that would drive them crazy.
Yeah. The sock hygiene is super important when you're out in war. Yeah.
And cold. And so I was cold, and that was nasty. So I don't like that. But it was June, July, August. And then in August, the surgeons were always coming in talking to me about what they were planning. And then they come in and they said, in Canada, we just don't have the medical, the technical know-how to find what's wrong with you. But we do know there's someone in the States. He's an interventional radiologist, and he will fill your lymph with dye, and he will have an MRI screen, and he'll be able to see a plume, and he'll see where the leak is. And we're going to send you down there. And so I went down there. And he was pretty confident he would find it. And so they filled me full of dye and looked, and they couldn't find it. Couldn't find it.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know. Couldn't find it. So then they said, well, we're not going to stop here. We're going to make sure something works for you. So in 3 or 4 days, we're going to do surgery and cut you open and look.
Again.
Yeah. But this is like looking at a spider web.
Yikes.
That's wrapped around your organs and your blood vessels and everything. And they're going to find a leak, like a hole in one of those. It's like, yeah, right. They're going to find a hole. So I had been on a diet called a TPN diet where they just put nutrition into your heart. Some people live like that.
Wow.
If they have problem with their lymph, the lymph siphons out the fat. And so if you want the lymph to rest, then you can't have any fat going through the lymph.
It's like a feeding tube?
Yeah,
Oh
feeding
my
tube
gosh.
into my heart.
Oh
And
my
so I
gosh.
had a tube coming out of my abdomen that collected the fluid, and then a feeding tube into my heart, and an IV to give me fluids.
Wow.
Fluids in, fluids out. It was just like, but when I got down to Philadelphia, they told me I had to eat food with no fat in it. So I was eating food with no fat in it. But then that night after that had that surgery, I thought, I've got to see, because they're going to cut me open, I've got to do a fat challenge to see whether if I eat fat that there'll be fat in this bag. Because if there isn't some murkiness in the bag, that means that I'm healed. But if there's murkiness, that means the fat is still going, that the fluid is still going out. And so I ate something that night that would have fat in it. And the next morning they came at breakfast and told me to eat something with fat, that they had to make sure of what my status was. And I told them I already did that, and they believed me. And so I showed them the bag, and it was clear. And they said, if bag is clear, then you're better.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so within half an hour, they'd pulled out all of the IV, and all the plugs were taken out of me. And I went to the Airbnb where my family was, and I realized that day was our anniversary.
Get out.
Yeah, way. That's right.
Wow. Just like that. You had the thing, you ate the food, they checked, and then, okay, you're good.
Yeah. And then they followed me, like they called me every week for a month.
Did you know that was your anniversary when you had woken up? So it was like after the fact, you walked through this and you're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what Jordan, wow. Like that's something, he said. That's something.
So what did they make sense of whatever this cancer was and what this leak is? Like, what is the medical explanation, or is there a medical explanation?
Well, I don't know about the cancer, why I had such a terrible cancer. I don't know that. But the leak itself, they put a lot of dye in my system, and they use poppy seed oil to carry the dye. And sometimes the poppy seed will close up a hole.
The leaks, yeah. So that could be.
So that could be the medical reason why I got better that day.
But they never gave you an explanation on this rare form of cancer.
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
No, I don't know why that was the way it was.
And you haven't had any complications since then?
No.
My goodness.
None. No, I've been healthy ever since. And, it took a long time to get better.
Yeah.
I'm quite a bit better. One of the things that bothered me was that because I lost so much weight, Jordan said, I think it was my amygdala in my brain, thought I starved. And so I had a starvation obsession where I would be afraid to be without food. And so that once I recognized that was the problem, then I dealt with it, and I don't have that anymore. But that was really something, because I thought I was filled with rage at times. Here it was fear. It was fear. But fear and rage can feel the same.
Yeah.
Now I know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that before.
I saw the We Who Wrestle with God tour. Is this a continuation of
Yes.
that, or is this different?
No, it's the same. The
same
book only
thing.
came out in November.
Yeah.
And so we traveled for 5 months before the book came out. And now we're traveling till April in North America.
Okay. And then to get tickets, we'll link it below. Is it just
You go to jordanpeterson.com to see where the shows are. His whole itinerary is there.
If you want to see the full extended version of this conversation, as well as all of our future conversations, have access to the chat, be able to ask our guests questions, you could sign up for a free 7-day trial. Patreon. The link is in the description and the pinned comment below. Here's a little preview of this conversation. All right? I'll see you over on Patreon. Peace.
I told God that if he spared me, I would speak publicly. And so here I am. You know, those prayers, if they're answered, you have an obligation.
And I was like, holy moly, this is how you guys roll, huh?
Yeah,
It's like
that's
there's
right.
a stadium full of people out there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
When you were younger, and Jordan and I, often they ask us what kind of regrets we have. It was the day that the doctor told me that I had this problem that I went home to see my son. I went for a checkup and I came home with a diagnosis. And it's up to women to tell the man they want to have a baby. It's not up to anyone else. If you don't have a baby, it's because you didn't. He was just teaching exactly what he's teaching. It's more biblical now. But now he realizes when he goes to church, it's a place for him to relax and meditate.
and he's been going to church with me.
Ruslan